The air was thick with tension as our small group made the winding journey through the dense, towering forests of rural Alaska. The sun dipped low on the horizon, casting long shadows that danced like specters among the trees. Our destination, an abandoned logging camp rumored to be haunted, a relic of a time long forgotten. We were thrill seekers, drawn to the unknown, and the allure of the supernatural called to us like a siren song. As we pulled into the clearing, our headlights illuminated the remnants of the camp. Decaying cabins stood like sentinels, their wooden frames bleached and worn by years of harsh winters. The ground was littered with the detritus of a once thriving operation, rusted saw blades, discarded tools, and the skeletal remains of machinery now overtaken by nature. "Look at this place," Jenna exclaimed, her voice tinged with excitement and a hint of fear. She was the first to leap from the van, her flashlight beam cutting through the growing dusk. "It's like something out of a horror movie." I glanced at the others, Mike, the skeptic, Sarah, the adventurous spirit, and Tom, the quiet observer. We all felt it, an undercurrent of unease that seemed to thrum in the air. "Let's set up camp near the main cabin," I suggested, my voice steady despite the chill creeping into my bones. The prospect of spending the night in such a place both thrilled and terrified me. As we unloaded our gear, the wind picked up, rustling the trees overhead. It whispered through the branches, creating an eerie symphony that seemed to echo our unease. The first cabin we approached was large, its windows shattered, the door hanging loosely on its hinges. I shone my flashlight into the darkness within, revealing a scene frozen in time. Old furniture, a table strewn with yellowed papers, and a dusty fireplace that had long since gone cold. "Do you think anyone still lives here?" Sarah asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Doubtful," Mike scoffed. "This place has been abandoned for decades. It's just a bunch of old wood and rust. There's nothing to be afraid of." But the atmosphere clung to us, heavy and oppressive. As night fell, we gathered around a makeshift campfire outside the cabin, the flames flickering and casting long shadows that seemed to writhe against the trees. We shared stories, our laughter echoing into the darkness, but deep down, we all felt the weight of the camp's history pressing in on us. "I heard that the last crew that worked here disappeared," Jenna said, her tone playful but her eyes darting to the shadows. "Some say it was the ghosts of loggers who never left." "Ghost stories, really?" Mike rolled his eyes, but I noticed a flicker of doubt in his expression. But then the night deepened, and the laughter faded into an uneasy silence. The only sound was the crackling of the fire and the rustling of leaves. It was then that we began to hear it. The distant echo of wood creaking, as if the camp itself were alive and breathing. Morning broke with a pale light filtering through the trees. The air was crisp, and the fog hung low, weaving around the trunks like a ghostly shroud. We gathered our gear, fueled by curiosity and the thrill of exploration. "Let's check out the logging shed first," I suggested, my pulse quickening at the thought of discovering something significant. The shed was a long, narrow building at the edge of the camp. The door was slightly ajar, as if inviting us in. Inside, the musty scent of damp wood and decay filled our nostrils. Long tables lined the walls, covered in tools and remnants of past work. Old saws hung from hooks, their blades dulled and rusted. "Look at this," Jenna exclaimed, holding up an old chainsaw, its metal body tarnished but somehow still imposing. "Imagine the work that was done here." As we explored the shed, we noticed a large map pinned to one wall. It was yellowed and faded, but several markings caught my eye, crosses and circles that indicated locations around the camp. One marked spot stood out, a short distance from our current location. "Should we check it out?" I asked, glancing at the others. "Absolutely," Sarah replied, her eyes sparkling with excitement. "Who knows what we'll find?" We made our way toward the marked spot, our footsteps crunching on the debris-laden ground. The atmosphere shifted as we approached, an electric feeling in the air that made the hairs on my arms stand on end. The trees loomed closer, their branches intertwining like skeletal fingers reaching for the sky. The clearing we entered was unlike the others, a graveyard of old machinery, abandoned vehicles, and a giant, rusted logging truck that had seen better days. It felt wrong here, the air heavy with an unseen presence. I could sense that we were not alone. "What is this place?" Tom murmured, his voice barely above a whisper. Jenna walked closer to the truck, her flashlight illuminating the words, "Haunted Logging Company," painted in peeling letters across the side. "This has to be a joke, right?" She laughed nervously, but the laugh didn't reach her eyes. "Let's take a look inside," I suggested, pushing the door open. It creaked ominously, revealing a dusty interior filled with broken glass and shattered memories. Papers were strewn across the floor, and a small radio lay silent on the dashboard. "Hey, look at this," Mike shouted from the back, his voice echoing in the hollow space. He held up a small, rusted box. It was locked, the metal corroded with age. "What do you think is inside?" "Only one way to find out," I replied, my heart racing with anticipation. As I reached for the box, a sudden gust of wind swept through the clearing, sending leaves swirling around us like a whirlwind. I felt an unsettling chill creep up my spine, a sensation that we were being watched. "Did you feel that?" Sarah asked, her eyes wide with fear. "Yeah, it's just the wind," Mike said dismissively, but I could see his bravado slipping. We continued to search the area, but the sense of dread grew heavier with every moment. As we turned to leave, I noticed something out of the corner of my eye, a flicker of movement behind the trees. My heart raced as I scanned the forest, but all I saw were the gnarled branches swaying in the wind. As the sun began to set, we returned to the main cabin, our earlier excitement tempered by an unsettling feeling that hung in the air. We gathered around the fire, the crackling flames illuminating our faces with a warm glow, but the shadows seemed deeper, more pronounced. "Maybe we should leave," Tom suggested quietly, his gaze darting to the tree line. "This place gives me the creeps." "Come on, it's just a little creepy," Jenna replied, though I could hear the quaver in her voice. "We came all this way. We can't just leave now." "I'm with Tom," I said reluctantly. "Something feels off here. I think we should consider packing up." Before we could continue the conversation, a loud crash echoed through the night, followed by a series of ominous thuds. We froze, eyes wide in terror. The noise came from the direction of the logging shed. "What was that?" Sarah whispered, her voice trembling. "Let's check it out," I said, though my own voice betrayed my fear. We crept toward the shed, the shadows swallowing us as we moved deeper into the darkness. My flashlight flickered, casting erratic beams of light that danced across the ground. The crash had stopped, but an unsettling silence now enveloped us, punctuated only by the sound of our own breathing. As we approached the shed, we saw the door swinging open and closed, as if propelled by an unseen force. "Hello?" Mike called out, his bravado failing. No response came, just the creaking of wood. We pushed the door open wider, stepping inside. The shed felt different, charged with an energy that set my teeth on edge. The tools were scattered across the floor, but something was wrong. There was a trail of muddy footprints leading toward the back of the shed. "Whose footprints are these?" Jenna asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "I don't know, but they lead outside," I replied, my heart racing. We followed the footprints into the clearing behind the shed, our breaths visible in the cold night air. The footprints led deeper into the woods, disappearing into the underbrush. The moon hung low, casting an ethereal glow over the landscape. "Should we keep going?" Sarah asked, hesitating at the edge of the tree line. "We have to know what's happening," I said, determination fueling my steps. The forest was alive with sounds, the rustling of leaves and the occasional snap of a twig echoing ominously. As we ventured deeper, the air grew colder, the trees closing in around us as if guarding a secret. I felt as though we were being watched, the presence growing more intense with every step. Suddenly, we stumbled into a small clearing lit by moonlight. In the center stood an ancient tree, its gnarled branches twisted and grotesque. At its base lay an altar made of stones, covered in strange symbols etched into the surface. My stomach churned at the sight. "What is this place?" Tom breathed, his eyes wide with disbelief. "I don't know, but it doesn't feel right," I said, stepping closer to inspect the altar. As I traced my fingers over the symbols, a sudden chill enveloped us. The wind howled through the trees, carrying with it whispers that seemed to echo our own fears. I stepped back, heart pounding, and caught Jenna's gaze. Her eyes reflected the terror we all felt. "Let's get out of here," Mike said, panic lacing his voice. But as we turned to leave, the wind picked up, swirling around us with an almost palpable force. We stumbled back, the darkness closing in as the whispers grew louder. Shadows danced among the trees, forming shapes that seemed to beckon us closer. The atmosphere shifted dramatically as we made our way back to the camp. The whispers faded, but the sense of dread lingered, gnawing at our minds. We gathered back at the main cabin, desperate to regroup and make sense of the night's events. "Maybe we're just imagining things," Mike suggested, though his voice trembled slightly. "It's easy to get freaked out in a place like this." "Imagining things," Jenna exclaimed, her eyes wide with fear. "We found footprints leading away from the shed. Something is definitely wrong here." "Let's focus on the map," I suggested, trying to regain a semblance of control. "There must be something that connects all of this." We spread the map out on the table, tracing the lines and symbols. "What if those markings indicate something?" Sarah said, her brow furrowing in concentration. "Maybe they're locations of other sites around here." I nodded, trying to stay focused despite the mounting anxiety. "If we follow the markings, we might find out what happened to the crew that disappeared. Or we might end up like them," Tom muttered, anxiety creeping into his voice. "We're not leaving until we find answers," I insisted, though doubt gnawed at my resolve. The night stretched on and we decided to follow the markings on the map the next day, hoping to find something that would clarify the mystery surrounding the logging camp. As we prepared for bed, a heavy sense of foreboding settled over us. I lay awake, unable to shake the feeling that we were not alone. The wind howled outside, and every creak of the cabin felt amplified in the oppressive silence. I closed my eyes, trying to will myself to sleep, but the whispers returned, echoing in my mind. Just before dawn, I was jolted awake by a loud crash. I shot up, heart racing, as I glanced around the dark cabin. My friends were still asleep, but the noise had come from outside. I crawled out of bed and approached the window, peering into the darkness. The wind had died down, but the silence was suffocating. Suddenly, a flash of movement caught my eye, a figure darting between the trees. My breath caught in my throat. Had I really seen someone? I blinked, but the figure was gone. I shook Jenna awake, urgency flooding my voice. "Jenna, wake up. I saw something outside." "What?" she mumbled, rubbing her eyes. "I think someone's out there." She shot up, wide awake now, and we quickly roused the others. "Did anyone hear that crash?" I asked, scanning their faces. "What crash?" Mike replied, confusion etched on his features. "I swear I heard something," I insisted, but doubt crept into my mind. Had I imagined it? The tension hung in the air, thick and suffocating. Morning light broke through the trees, casting a soft glow over the camp. As we sat around the campfire, the unease from the night before still lingered. "Let's follow the map today," I suggested, eager to escape the oppressive atmosphere of the cabin. We agreed to check out the nearest marked location, a small hill to the east of the camp. The hike was steep, the ground uneven under our feet, but the fresh air felt invigorating. As we climbed, I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched, as if unseen eyes were tracking our every move. When we reached the top, a breathtaking view unfolded before us, a vast expanse of forest stretching as far as the eye could see. But at the edge of the clearing lay another abandoned structure, a small watchtower that had once been used to oversee the logging operations. "Let's check it out," Jenna said, her excitement evident as she bounded toward the tower. The door creaked open, revealing a narrow staircase that spiraled upward. We climbed cautiously, the wood creaking beneath our weight. As we reached the top, the view was even more stunning, but an unsettling feeling crept over me. "Look at this," Mike called out, gesturing to a weathered journal resting on a small table. I moved closer, peering over his shoulder as he opened the journal. The pages were filled with entries, the handwriting shaky and frantic. The last few entries sent a chill down my spine. "They're watching us. The woods are alive. We need to leave before it's too late." "What does this mean?" Jenna whispered, her voice trembling. It means we're not the first to feel this way, I replied, my heart racing. We exchanged anxious glances, the weight of the journal's words sinking in. What if they're still out there? Tom asked, fear creeping into his voice. We need to get back, I said, urgency propelling my movements. We can't ignore this any longer. We hurried back down the tower, the journal clutched tightly in my hands. As we reached the ground, the wind picked up again, swirling around us with an unsettling energy. The shadows in the forest seemed to shift, deepening as we made our way back to the camp. Back at the cabin, we gathered around the table, the journal spread out before us. Something is definitely wrong here, I said, my voice steady despite the fear simmering beneath the surface. We need to figure out what happened to these people. The entries in the journal revealed a descent into paranoia and dread, detailing strange occurrences in the woods, disembodied voices, shadows flitting through the trees, and an overwhelming feeling of being watched. Maybe we should try to leave, Tom suggested, his voice shaking. We can't just run, Mike argued, a hint of frustration creeping into his tone. We need to know the truth. Let's check the last marked location, I proposed, my resolve hardening. It might lead us to the answers we need. Reluctantly, we agreed, gathering our supplies as the sun dipped low in the sky. As we ventured back into the woods, the atmosphere thickened, the shadows deepening with every step. The air felt charged, crackling with an energy that made the hairs on my arms stand on end. The path grew narrower, the trees looming closer together as we approached the marked spot on the map. Suddenly, we emerged into another clearing, a small cabin, its walls covered in creeping vines. It was darker here, the sunlight barely penetrating the thick foliage. What is this place? Jenna whispered, fear etching her features. I pushed the door open, the wood groaning in protest. Inside, the air was stale, filled with the scent of decay. The interior was cluttered with remnants of life, old furniture, shattered mirrors, and a collection of photographs lining the walls. As I examined the photos, my blood ran cold. They depicted the previous crew, the same faces we'd seen in the journal, but what struck me was the last photo, a group shot taken outside the very cabin we stood in. Their expressions were filled with dread, eyes wide with terror. What happened to them? Sarah breathed, fear evident in her voice. Before I could respond, a loud crash echoed from outside, followed by a series of frantic footsteps. We rushed to the window, peering into the darkness. Shadows danced among the trees, a figure darting back and forth just beyond our view. Run, I shouted, adrenaline surging through me as I bolted for the door. We fled the cabin, the forest swallowing us as we dashed deeper into the trees. The figure pursued us, its movements swift and silent. I glanced back, heart pounding, and caught a glimpse of something pale and ghostly, its face twisted in anguish. Keep going, I urged, pushing my legs to move faster. We raced through the woods, the underbrush tearing at our clothes as we stumbled over roots and fallen branches. The whispers returned, echoing through the trees, taunting us as we fought to escape. Finally, we burst into a small clearing, gasping for breath. The moon hung high above us, casting an eerie light across the ground. We need to regroup, I panted, trying to catch my breath. But as we caught our breath, we realized something was wrong. The shadows moved closer, coiling around us like serpents. What is happening? Jenna cried, her voice rising in panic. Suddenly, a figure emerged from the darkness, a ghostly apparition with hollow eyes and a sorrowful expression. Help us, it whispered, its voice echoing with desperation. Who are you? I shouted, fear gripping my heart. We are the lost, it replied, its form flickering like a flame. We were taken by the woods, trapped in this place. You must leave before it's too late. Leave, we can't just abandon you, Sarah protested, tears streaming down her face. Run, the darkness is coming for you, the apparition warned, its voice rising in urgency. I felt a surge of resolve. We have to help them. But the shadows surged forward, swallowing the figure as the whispers grew louder, drowning out our thoughts. Run, I screamed again, urging the others to flee. We sprinted away, the forest closing in around us, the shadows clawing at our heels. The whispers grew more frantic, echoing in our minds as we raced through the night. We finally reached the camp, the familiar sight of the cabin offering a moment of solace. But the darkness was close behind us, the shadows swirling and merging into a dark mass. "Get inside," I shouted, shoving the door open. We barricaded ourselves inside, hearts racing as we listened to the chaos outside. The whispers intensified, the air thick with fear and despair. "What do we do?" Jenna cried, panic evident in her voice. "We have to confront it," I replied, fear turning into determination. "We can't let it take us too." We gathered our courage, pushing back against the fear that threatened to consume us. We had to face whatever was out there, the darkness that had ensnared the logging camp and trapped the lost souls within. "Are you ready?" I asked, my voice steady. "Ready as we'll ever be," Mike replied, his bravado returning despite the tremor in his hands. We opened the door, stepping into the fray. The shadows swirled around us, whispering our deepest fears. The air felt electric, charged with a malevolent energy. "Show yourself," I shouted, my voice cutting through the chaos. The shadows coalesced into a figure, its form twisting and shifting. "You shouldn't have come here," it hissed, the voice echoing with 1,000 whispers. "We're not afraid of you," Sarah yelled, her voice breaking through the fear. The figure recoiled, the shadows swirling violently as it writhed in pain. "You cannot escape the darkness," it screamed, but we stood our ground. "We're not leaving until you let them go," I shouted, determination fueling my words. The air around us crackled with energy as we focused our thoughts, summoning the strength within us. We had to break the hold the darkness had over the camp. As we concentrated, the whispers intensified, rising to a deafening roar. The shadows twisted and writhed, trying to break our resolve. But we held firm, our voices united against the darkness. Suddenly, the figure began to dissolve, the shadows peeling away like layers of skin. "No, you cannot do this," it howled, the voice laced with desperation. "Yes, we can," I shouted, the power of our resolve surging through me. With one final push, the darkness shattered, exploding outward in a burst of light. The shadows dissolved into nothingness, and a profound silence enveloped us. We stood in the clearing, breathless and shaken. The oppressive atmosphere that had haunted the camp lifted, replaced by an eerie calm. "Is it over?" Jenna whispered, looking around as if expecting the darkness to return. "I think so," I replied, feeling a weight lift from my shoulders. But even as we spoke, I couldn't shake the feeling that something remained. The memories of the lost souls lingered, their presence still felt in the air. "We need to honor them," I said, determination coursing through me. We gathered around the ancient tree, the altar now bare of its dark energy. Together, we shared our memories, honoring the souls that had been trapped within the woods. As we stood there, the whispers returned, but they were different this time, gentle, almost comforting. The forest felt alive, a connection forged between us and the spirits that had lingered for too long. "Thank you," a voice echoed softly, the shadows shifting in the moonlight. We left the logging camp behind, our hearts heavy with the memories of those we had encountered. As we drove away, the forest felt lighter, the weight of the past lifting with every mile. But as we glanced back at the camp, a small part of me couldn't help but wonder, was the darkness truly gone, or would it forever linger in the shadows, waiting for its next victims? The journey home felt surreal, our minds replaying the events of the past few days. We were forever changed, bonded by our shared experience. As we reached the edge of the forest, the sun broke through the clouds, casting a warm glow over the landscape. "I can't believe we made it out," Tom said, relief evident in his voice. "It's not over," I replied, my heart heavy with the memories. "We can never forget what happened there." The experience lingered in our minds, a haunting reminder of the darkness that existed just beyond the light. Days turned into weeks, but the memories never faded. I found myself waking in the night, the whispers echoing in my mind, the shadows lurking just beyond my vision. What if we never truly left? I wondered aloud one night, unable to shake the feeling of unease. "We did what we could," Jenna replied, her voice steady. "We honored them. That's what matters." But even as she spoke, I could see the flicker of doubt in her eyes. The darkness may have retreated, but the scars it left behind would never fully heal. As time passed, the experience became a part of us, woven into the fabric of our lives. We would share the story with others, but no one would ever truly understand the weight of what we had faced. The logging camp would remain a haunting memory, a reminder of the darkness that lingered in the shadows, waiting for the next curious souls to venture too close. And as I lay in bed each night, the whispers returned, gentle yet insistent, echoing the warnings of those lost souls. Help us, remember us. The darkness was always near, and I knew deep down that we could never fully escape its grasp. Months passed since our harrowing encounter, but the memories lingered like a ghost haunting my thoughts. The logging camp had become a part of my identity, a weight that I carried with me every day. My friends and I had agreed to keep the experience to ourselves, but it was a secret that pressed heavily on our hearts. One evening, as winter began to descend upon us, I received a call from Mike. His voice was shaky, filled with an urgency I hadn't heard in months. "We need to go back," he said, his tone leaving no room for argument. "What? Are you out of your mind?" I exclaimed, incredulous. "I can't explain it over the phone. Just trust me. We need to go back to the logging camp. Something is happening." Against my better judgment, I found myself agreeing. A part of me was drawn back to that haunted place, a need to confront the shadows that had settled over us. The following weekend, we gathered at the van, our nerves electric with a mix of fear and anticipation. Jenna was visibly shaken, her hands trembling as she clutched the seatbelt. "Are we really doing this?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "We have to face it," I replied, though uncertainty gnawed at my gut. As we drove through the familiar winding roads, the memories flooded back, each curve and bend evoking a sense of dread. The trees loomed taller, their branches heavy with snow, an oppressive atmosphere settling over us as we approached the clearing. When we arrived, the camp stood silent, almost expectant. The cabins seemed to watch us with hollow eyes, and the air was thick with the remnants of our past encounters. "What do we do now?" Tom asked, his voice echoing in the stillness. "We find out what's happening," I said, determination coursing through me. "We're not leaving until we uncover the truth." As we stepped into the main cabin, the air felt charged, a palpable energy swirling around us. The journal lay on the table, untouched since our last visit, but its presence felt heavier, as if it contained secrets yet to be uncovered. "We should split up and explore," I suggested, my voice steady despite the apprehension that clung to us. "We need to figure out what's going on." Mike nodded, his eyes scanning the room. "Let's check the logging shed again. It might have more clues." The rest of us agreed, and we made our way to the shed. The door creaked open, revealing the familiar sight of old tools and remnants of the past. But as we searched, something felt different. An undercurrent of tension hung in the air. "What if we find something we're not meant to?" Jenna whispered, her voice trembling. "We can't let fear control us," I replied, determination flaring within me. As we rummaged through the shed, I noticed a hidden compartment in the wall. My heart raced as I pried it open, revealing a collection of items: rusted tools, broken chains, and a small, blood-stained cloth. "What is this?" I murmured, horrified. "Maybe it's evidence of what happened to the crew," Tom said, his voice low. "Or maybe it's a warning," Mike added, his expression grave. As we examined the items, the air grew heavy with unease. The whispers returned, echoing through the shed, growing louder and more frantic. Shadows flitted just beyond our vision, and the temperature dropped, chilling us to the bone. "We need to leave," Jenna urged, her voice rising with panic. "No," I shouted, fear igniting within me. "We can't give in to this. We have to find out what happened." Suddenly, a loud crash reverberated through the shed, and the door slammed shut behind us. We were trapped. The shadows coalesced, swirling around us in a chaotic dance. "What is happening?" Sarah cried, her eyes wide with fear. "They're coming for us," Mike yelled, his voice filled with terror. The whispers escalated into a deafening cacophony, drowning out our thoughts. The shadows twisted and turned, forming a dark figure at the center. "You shouldn't have returned," it hissed, the voice layered with 1,000 echoes. "Let us go," I shouted, my heart pounding in my chest. "Why did you come back?" the figure demanded, its eyes glinting with malice. "You've disturbed the balance." "We're here to help," Jenna pleaded, her voice shaking. The figure recoiled, shadows swirling around it like a storm. "You cannot help those who are lost. They belong to the darkness now." "No," I shouted, stepping forward, resolve hardening within me. "We refuse to let them go." The shadows surged forward, but we stood our ground, the memories of our lost friends flooding our minds. "We will not let you take us," I shouted, the words echoing through the chaos. The figure shrieked, a sound filled with rage and despair as the shadows began to dissipate. "You cannot escape the fate of the lost." But as we stood together, the air crackled with energy and a light began to pulse around us, driving back the darkness. The shadows shrank away and the whispers transformed into a chorus of voices, rising in unison. "Remember us, free us," they cried, the energy shifting from malevolent to desperate. "We will remember," I shouted, tears streaming down my face. "We will honor your memory." As our voices merged, the air filled with a warm light, illuminating the shed. The shadows quivered, flickering as the figure writhed in pain. "Stop," it screamed, but we pushed forward, our resolve unwavering. With one final surge of energy, we called out, "We refuse to let you claim them." The darkness shattered, exploding into a million fragments of light. The shed erupted with brilliance, illuminating the corners that had been shrouded in shadow. When the light faded, we found ourselves standing in the clearing, the camp transformed. The oppressive energy that had haunted us for so long lifted, replaced by a sense of calm. "We did it," Tom whispered, disbelief etched on his features. But as I looked around, the memories of those lost lingered in the air, a bittersweet reminder of the battle we had fought. "Let's honor them," I said, my voice steady as we gathered together, hands intertwined. We shared stories of the crew, remembering their lives and the darkness they had faced. The whispers faded, replaced by a gentle breeze that wrapped around us like a warm embrace. As we stood there, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. The logging camp was no longer a place of fear, but a sanctuary for those who had once been lost. With each story shared, the memories transformed, no longer filled with anguish, but with love and remembrance. The journey back home felt different this time, lighter and filled with hope. The shadows had been dispelled, and the whispers transformed into a soothing lullaby that echoed in my mind. We vowed to return to the camp, not out of fear, but to celebrate the lives of those we had encountered. The darkness had been a part of our story, but it would no longer define us. As we drove away, the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a golden hue over the forest. The logging camp would forever remain a part of us, a reminder of the strength we had found in each other and the resilience of the human spirit. Together, we had faced the darkness and emerged victorious, our hearts intertwined with the memories of those who had once been lost. And as I closed my eyes that night, the whispers returned, not as a warning, but as a promise, a reminder that love and memory could conquer even the darkest of fears.